I gave up vacations, dreams, and stability to save my family's home only to have it handed over to my sister. Then, a single text shattered everything. We no longer trust you. After years of sacrifice and invisible struggle, I was suddenly erased from the family I thought I knew. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I'm Emma Caldwell, 32 years old, working as a marketing executive in Seattle. My life was stable, predictable, or so I thought until one morning when a simple text message shattered everything I believed about my family. It was a chilly Tuesday when I unlocked my phone and saw a message from my mother that stopped me cold. "We have changed all the locks on the front door and the gate code. We no longer trust you." I stared at the screen in disbelief. How could they say that? How could my own family, the people I had sacrificed so much for, turn their backs on me without warning? For years, I had lived in the shadow of my younger sister, Olivia. She was the golden child, the one who received all the praise, the attention, and eventually, the house. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the steady provider who kept our family afloat through hard work and sacrifice. I had been paying the mortgage $5,600 a month for the past 2 years, 2 whole years of relentless payments, skipped vacations, and sacrificed dreams. All of it vanished in an instant, dismissed with a cold text. The realization hit me like a freight train. They gave Olivia the house, the very home I had kept alive despite my financial commitment. My efforts had been invisible, my sacrifices unappreciated. I sat there, my hands trembling, before typing a reply that was calm but edged with quiet fury. "Understood. Very smart. But I think you overlooked one thing. I didn't explain what that one thing was yet. Not then. I wanted to see how far their betrayal would go, how they would respond when I stopped being their invisible bank account." That text was more than just words on a screen. It was the beginning of a painful journey, a journey through betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, but also one of courage and liberation. It marked the day I started reclaiming my dignity, my voice, and ultimately, my life. Growing up in our 4-bedroom house nestled in the quiet suburbs of Seattle, the atmosphere was never quite as warm as it looked from the outside. From a very young age, it became painfully clear that my family operated under an unspoken hierarchy, one that always placed my younger sister, Olivia, far above me. Birthdays were the first glaring sign. Olivia's celebrations were grand, extravagant affairs filled with dozens of guests, custom-made cakes, and piles of carefully chosen gifts. The kind of parties that became the talk of the neighborhood, the events everyone looked forward to. My own birthdays, in contrast, were modest: a simple family dinner, a store-bought cake, and practical gifts like clothes or school supplies. Those gestures felt less like tokens of love and more like obligations checked off a list. When I excelled academically, bringing home straight A's, my achievements were met with polite nods or a simple "good job." But when Olivia struggled in her math class and barely managed to pass, the house would erupt in celebration. "Olivia just needs a little more encouragement," my mother would say whenever I dared to question the unfair treatment. "You're naturally gifted. Emma, you don't need as much support." By the time high school rolled around, I had quietly accepted my role as the responsible, reliable daughter, one who sacrificed her own desires and dreams without complaint. Meanwhile, Olivia blossomed into the family princess, beautiful, charming, and effortlessly adored. Yet beneath the surface, she was reckless with money and prone to dramatic crises that my parents rushed to solve without hesitation. Our grandparents, who were the only ones to see the truth beneath the family's facade, left their house as a shared inheritance to all of us. I believe this was their subtle attempt to correct the imbalance, to ensure I would receive my fair share. But even this gesture couldn't erase the invisible line drawn between Olivia and me. Those early years shaped not just my childhood, but my entire sense of self. I learned to give endlessly while receiving little in return. The shadows of unequal love stretched long over my life, setting the stage for the painful battles that would come later. By the time I graduated from college, I had thrown myself entirely into building a career in marketing. The early years were grueling long hours, tight deadlines, and constant pressure, but I embraced it all with determination. Climbing the corporate ladder felt like the only way to carve out a life for myself beyond the shadow of my family's favoritism. Meanwhile, Olivia drifted from one job to another. Unable to hold on to anything demanding, she seemed to believe that success should come without effort, that life owed her the rewards she desired. Her husband, Mark, was equally unstable, a charming man, but lacking the drive to sustain a stable life. Together, they lived in an apartment barely big enough for two, yet they expected more than they were willing to work for. 3 years ago, my parents faced a financial crisis. Years of poor money management, repeated bailouts of Olivia's reckless spending, and my father's struggling business had left them unable to keep up with the mortgage payments on the family home, $5,600 a month. One Sunday evening, during a dinner that felt more like a trial than a gathering, they broke the news with heavy hearts. Tears streaming down their faces, they explained their dire situation, and I immediately offered to help, despite the tangled history between us. The thought of losing the house filled me with dread. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was the repository of my childhood memories, the only connection I had left to my grandparents. "I can take over the mortgage payments until you get back on your feet," I told them, my voice steady even as anger simmered beneath the surface. The relief on their faces was immediate, but the gratitude was absent, as if it was expected, as if I was simply doing what any responsible daughter should do. To afford those payments, I sacrificed my own dreams. The condo I had planned to buy was shelved indefinitely. I cut back on dining out, vacations, and even small pleasures. Weekends were spent consulting to bring in extra income. The financial weight was crushing, but I told myself it was temporary, that saving the family home was worth every sacrifice. Every Sunday, I drove to that house for family dinner, sitting quietly at the table while Olivia commanded the conversation. Her latest drama took center stage, while my career achievements were met with distracted nods or overlooked entirely. My best friend, Laura, often expressed disbelief. "They're using you." "Emma," she said during our Thursday coffee dates, "you're paying for a house you don't even live in, and they treat you like a never-ending paycheck." My boyfriend, Ryan, was more subtle but shared the same concern. On nights when I returned from dinner emotionally drained, he held me close and whispered, "You deserve to be appreciated, not taken for granted." Still, I kept making the payments. I convinced myself that family obligations transcended fairness. I told myself that the house was worth saving, even if I was invisible in the process. But deep down, the quiet resentment was growing, a slow-burning fire that threatened to consume me. The day I found out they had changed the locks on the house was the day everything I believed about my family broke apart. I had driven by the neighborhood one evening after work, planning to stop by briefly as usual, but as I approached the front gate, I realized something was wrong. The gate code I had memorized no longer worked. I called my mother immediately, my voice trembling with confusion and disbelief. "Mom, why can't I get in? Did you change the locks?" Her reply was cold and clipped. "We thought it was best. We don't feel safe with you coming around anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. They claimed that Olivia had seen me driving past the house and felt threatened. The accusation was absurd, completely fabricated. I hadn't been near the house that night. But it wasn't just the locks that had changed. The dynamic within the family had shifted dramatically. That house, the one I had poured so much money into, was no longer mine to enter. I was locked out, betrayed by the very people I had sacrificed everything for. When I confronted my parents at dinner the following Sunday, the atmosphere was thick with tension. My father cleared his throat and announced, almost casually, that Olivia and her husband, Mark, would be moving in. Their apartment lease was ending, and it was financially sensible. He said, "I asked about the mortgage. How could Olivia contribute if I was still paying the full amount?" Silence. Then my mother spoke, her voice cold and dismissive. "Since you live in the city now, you don't really need the house. Olivia deserves it more." Her words struck me like a physical blow. "Deserves," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "I've paid over $132,000 in mortgage payments over 2 years." Olivia rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with condescension. "It's not like you don't have the money. Mom and Dad always planned for me to have the house eventually." Neither of my parents met my gaze. That silence said more than words ever could. I stood up quietly and gathered my things. Olivia accused me of always walking away when things got tough, of failing to support the family. But supporting the family financially, at least, was exactly what I had been doing. That night, I cried on Ryan's shoulder, releasing years of frustration and pain. They believed Olivia deserved everything, no matter the cost to me. And maybe Ryan was right. Maybe it was time to stop enabling them. The locks weren't just physical barriers. They were the final, devastating proof that I was no longer welcome, a harsh betrayal that cut deeper than any words ever could. That moment when I realized I was locked out of the very home I had been keeping afloat was the final straw. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. The years of silent sacrifices, the endless mortgage payments, all reduced to nothing more than a convenience for my family to exploit and discard when it suited them. For days afterward, I wrestled with a storm of emotions: anger, hurt, disbelief, and the quiet, growing realization that continuing down this path would only feed the cycle of exploitation. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages from my mother, reminding me of family harmony and the sacrifices expected from everyone. I replied with bare minimums, needing space to process the blatant unfairness. Ryan was the only steady voice in the chaos. One evening, as I sat on the couch, drained and defeated, he took my hands in his and said softly, "Emma, you don't have to keep being their safety net. They don't see you. They never will if you let them keep treating you like this." His words sank in. I had been their invisible provider for too long, endlessly giving and expecting nothing in return. The sacrifices I made missing vacations, postponing buying my own home, taking on extra work were all ignored, dismissed as my duty rather than acknowledged as sacrifices. Late one night, after hours of pacing and restless thoughts, I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking, navigating to the mortgage payments. I stared at the recurring transaction setup to transfer $5,600 every month. My finger hovered over the cancel button, and I thought about all the dreams I had shelved, the life I had delayed for a family that no longer welcomed me. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and relief. Finally, with a deep breath, I clicked cancel. A confirmation popped up, and I pressed yes. That single act marked the moment I chose myself over their demands. I knew the consequences: foreclosure, financial turmoil, and the inevitable backlash from my family. But for the first time in years, I felt a strange liberation. I was no longer their invisible ATM. I was reclaiming my dignity, setting boundaries, and saying, "Enough." That night, I turned off my phone and called in sick to work. I needed time to brace myself for the storm I had just unleashed. But beneath the anxiety was a quiet, fierce determination to never let myself be invisible again. The days following my decision to stop paying the mortgage unleashed a relentless storm. My phone was flooded with calls and messages, some desperate, others accusatory. My family's reaction was swift and unyielding. Olivia's voice was the first to break the silence, leaving me a voicemail filled with anger and disbelief. "Emma, what are you playing at? The bank called about a missed payment. This is typical of you always causing problems. Call me back now." Shortly after, my father's voice followed, harsh and pleading. "Emma, this behavior is unacceptable. You have responsibilities to this family. Please call your mother immediately." My mother's messages were more calculated but no less dismissive. "Sweetheart, there's been a misunderstanding. The locks were changed for security after some break-ins in the neighborhood. Of course, you're still welcome. Please call us about the bank issue." The lie was so transparent it made me bitterly laugh. There hadn't been any break-ins. The timing was no coincidence. It was a carefully crafted excuse to cover their betrayal. Weeks passed, and the pressure escalated. Family group chats erupted with screenshots of private conversations, painting me as selfish and unstable. Extended relatives, unaware of the full story, lectured me on duty and loyalty. You can't abandon your parents. My Aunt Martha insisted. Cousin Thomas was blunt. You make good money. Why are you being stingy? Only my Aunt Catherine reached out with genuine concern. Emma, I'm not taking sides, but something's off here. Can we talk? The constant attacks took a toll. Sleep became elusive. I'd wake at 3 in the morning, heart racing, mind spinning. My appetite vanished, and I lost 7 pounds in just 2 weeks. At work, concentration was a battle. Ryan became my anchor. He brought groceries, urged me to eat, and held me through panic attacks. You didn't abandon them, he reminded me gently. They locked you out of a house you paid for. Anyone would have done the same. With legal advice from Amanda, my family law attorney, I learned that I had no obligation to continue payments. The mortgage was in my parents' names. My payments had been voluntary, though morally complex. Legally, it was straightforward. Armed with this knowledge, I felt steadier, more empowered to face the chaos. But the family fallout was far from over. It was only just beginning. After the storm of conflict and chaos, a fragile calm began to settle over my life. Without the crushing burden of the mortgage payments, I felt a renewed sense of freedom and possibility. I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment with Ryan, a place where we could finally breathe and build something that was truly ours. The shift wasn't easy. Healing from years of betrayal and exhaustion took time. I started therapy sessions with Dr. Emily, who helped me unpack the layers of resentment and grief I had been carrying. Each week, I learned to set boundaries, to recognize my worth, and to prioritize my own well-being without guilt. Financially, the change was remarkable. Redirecting the $5,600 I had been sending to my family each month into savings gave me a new kind of security. Within 6 months, I had enough for a down payment on a home of my own, a milestone I had long postponed. At work, too, things shifted. Freed from the constant distraction of family drama, I found focus and energy I hadn't known I was missing. My efforts were recognized, and I was promoted to a leadership role in marketing strategy, complete with a significant raise. Ryan celebrated with me, toasting to a future where I was finally valued for who I am. Meanwhile, through my only remaining family connection, my Aunt Catherine, I learned that the foreclosure process was underway. My parents had downsized, adjusting to a smaller apartment, grappling with the consequences of choices they had made. Olivia and Mark faced their own struggles, far from the life they had expected. Though the wounds of the past were still raw, I felt hope. I was no longer defined by the sacrifices I had made for others. I was building a new chapter grounded in healing, independence, and respect, a chapter where I finally put myself first. Looking back on everything, I realized the most important lesson wasn't just about family loyalty or standing up for myself, though those were significant milestones in my journey. It was about understanding a deeper truth that I cannot set myself on fire just to keep others warm. True love, whether from family or a partner, demands respect, reciprocity, and mutual care. It is not about endless sacrifice or one-sided exploitation. Over time, I have come to let go of the anger I once held toward my family. Instead, I've learned to accept the limits of what they could offer me emotionally. My parents did the best they could with the tools they had, flawed as those tools were. Olivia is a product of the unbalanced system they created, shaped by the same environment. Understanding this hasn't made it easier to forgive everything, but it has helped me release the bitterness that once threatened to consume me entirely. Now, I stand in a home that truly belongs to me, surrounded by relationships that are based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or guilt. I am stronger, wiser, and more at peace than I ever thought possible. Ryan, my partner, often reminds me that the courage to set boundaries was the greatest gift I have given myself. That decision changed not only my life, but also how I view love, family, and, most importantly, my own self-worth. The journey here was painful, marked by heartache, difficult choices, and moments of doubt, but the destination has made every step worthwhile. This story is not mine alone. It belongs to anyone who has ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or trapped by the expectations of others. Remember, your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice for others, but by how deeply you honor your own needs, values, and dignity. This story reminds us of the vital importance of setting healthy boundaries and honoring our own worth, especially when faced with family dynamics that challenge our sense of self. True love and respect are built on mutual care and understanding, not on sacrifice at the cost of our own well-being. Emma's journey shows that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is essential for healing and growth. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.